Just goodness gracious, this is going to be a great conversation. I
I'm
can tell
very
already.
excited.
I know. Oh, we're ready to dive right in. And I love that we have such a open, safe space to have these kinds of conversations with each other, and that we make room for each other to share our thoughts and to be able to ask questions. Today, we do have an expert joining us. I'm really happy to be able to offer the floor today to Marcy Donaldson, who is with End of Life Advocacy and Care. And she's really been a hospice nurse for decades now. So you've been in this kind of an environment for a really long time, super educated on this community of folks who are in need of this service. And so our objective today is to learn more about it, to learn what it might mean for us or someone we love, and then how just have a chance to ask all your questions. So let's see, I do have a quick poll to kick us off here. I don't want to forget that. I did set it up. So we'll get that going. Feel free to answer it. There's just a few questions. And that might help our speaker as we're going through it. And again, we're very casual today. So Marcia is just going to introduce the topic, talk about it a little bit, and then we will just launch into all the questions and all the answers that we can. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I appreciate it. Marcy?
Should I go ahead or should I
You can go
answer
ahead. We
this
can leave
poll
this poll
myself?
up and then I will
Oh,
feel
no,
free. And then I will share the
I
results
see.
with everyone as well,
Oh,
so that we can
just
all
looking at this
kind of
one.
know how everyone in the conversation is on this
Excellent.
I like that.
matter.
Hi, Dave. I think Dave might be the only one I know on the call. Hi, my name's Marcy Donaldson. I am just to give you a little background. I've been a hospice nurse in the community on the east side, serving with Mountain Head Hospice for 13 years of my initial part of my hospice career, and have been working with hospice as a volunteer, administrator, nurse case manager since 2000. I most recently in the last few years have been part of a small group that found out that Hopewell House was closing down, and created a 501c3 to purchase the home and create a unique model of care there. And so I've been involved with them as an administrator. Now I just fill in, and I'm there once in a while as a support for administrators and nurses. But what I'm really seeing, I'm just very passionate about filling the gaps in the community and finding out where those are. And one of the things we have been seeing at Hopewell House that I feel needs to be addressed is that Hopewell, I don't know if many of you know about what it is. It's a 12-bed residential care facility licensure for folks that are just at end of life only. That's the only population, folks that are on hospice services. So there are 12 beds, and 12 beds with a population of 2 million people isn't a lot to serve the community. And what I'm seeing there, or have seen over the last few years, is that the model itself is a little too much for a large majority of folks that want to come for medical aid in dying, specifically from out of state, but even in state. There's many reasons folks don't want to have their planned death day in their own homes. And we can talk about what those reasons might be in a little more detail if anybody has questions around that. But it's a residential care facility, and folks that are participating in MAID are oftentimes, ambulatory and, walking and talking and living their life. And so having so much staff and so much around them tends to be, they're just seeking a quieter home-like environment. And so I just started calling Airbnb and VRBO, each host individually, and asking, would you say yes to this? And I did get some answers of yes, but I mean, I literally was on the phone for months and got 4 yeses. And I can't even imagine what people go through when they're trying to facilitate that from another state and they don't know the area. They're trying to figure out where they're going, what they're doing. And spending all that time on the phone. So I started like creating a list of folks that said yes, and then got involved with Sally and Val at Elcor, and they have their own list. And so we've been sharing, the yeses, and it's just very much word of mouth. Folks are not advertising that they say yes to this, for, obvious reasons, but Hopewell House is a place that advertises that they say yes to this. So it's kind of the go-to for most folks. And it's not always the most ideal location. Sometimes people feel very overwhelmed with the environment, as beautiful and all the beautiful offerings. They feel a little overwhelmed with what's offered there. So I have just been reaching out to folks and found out about Host2Host through Dave and Silka, and reached out to Charity, and we chatted a couple times. And then I'm just want to apologize for not showing up at your last meeting. My husband had a big adventure in the forest. So thank you for that, Grace. And yeah, the fog is just starting to lift on our lives right now.
Yeah.
So
Good.
so yeah, I just wanted to reach out and talk to folks about, I've created, I mean, anytime you start something new, it's always in, you're shaping and shifting as you learn. And so I'm here to learn from you all and answer any questions that you might have for me as well. Super excited to hear that there are folks already. I mean, I knew Dave and Silka. I got introduced to them. I don't even remember how we got connected, but one of the Hopewell volunteers. And then I didn't realize other hosts were actually participating and taking hosting these folks. So I'm so excited. But I'm trying to develop, what I'd really love to do is be an advocate for the host as well as the client that I'm serving. And some of the things I'm thinking about, I am not a host, so I don't have experience in that department, but
Yeah.
the things that I think about are, what kinds of smells would you want or not want in your environment? Crowd size, pets, body fluids, things that are going to be most likely a part of the experience for a person.
Mhm.
And how I might best advocate for the hosts themselves and their space.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting, Marcy, that you should bring that up, because that was one of the things that really struck me about our conversation, was that your life's focus and is obviously for the patient, but that you're aware that there's these other factors that really need to be fully considered so that the host can be completely comfortable with this type of arrangement and understands what to expect. Because I think sometimes when you just are heading into something, you don't know what to expect this to be, especially if you haven't had a lot of experience with hospice type situations. So um, could I kick it off with a question? Because
Yeah,
I already have one.
yeah, go.
I've already got one. Tamara was pointing out something that has been interesting to me, and it's something that we kind of touched on, but it's, how do you know how long to kind of expect in these situations? Does it vary? Tamara's talking about someone who's doing a voluntary non
Stop
eating anymore,
eating.
right? Yeah, stop eating. So it seems like there could be varying lengths to these, and that it might be unclear. Can you provide any information for us about that?
Yes, absolutely. I actually, as a side note, have the clients that I've had so far, one of the challenges they've found is competing with the calendars of folks that are vacationing, especially in the summer, and trying to get in that last minute uh I'm blanking, I've lost my word. Um Reservation. And so
Yeah.
we've created a group of individuals. I've just been throwing the word out, and the web has been spread wide. And so I've actually connected with 15 individuals who have who have ADUs or spaces, and they want to learn how to serve this population specifically. And maybe they join in with Host2Host. I'm not certain how that plays out, but we meet once a month and we have these conversations about what to expect as far as like how you would manage a reservation. What has worked a few times is folks coming in and having a reservation at just a hotel or some place that doesn't say yes, but creating and planning for sort of that nesting day, that day of the planned death for medical aid in dying. It's a little easier to target if they have a hard date.
Okay.
And people change their minds. Once they get that medication to the bedside, it's like, oh, I have this, they're empowered to look at life. They're looking through a different lens sometimes. And it's like, oh, I haven't eaten for 3 days and I'm done with this world. And then those chocolate chip cookies smell pretty good. Like maybe I'll just have some of those now. And maybe I'll go for a walk outside and enjoy this day. So it kind of becomes more of like a day to day. I think that would how that might look from the host perspective is to have some kind of limitation or expectation on the time frame for an event. So if VSED is being, for example, is being um, pursued, it might be like you ask for a 7-day or you ask for a 14-day, or even with medical aid in dying, maybe you have a minimum amount of reservation days, like 3. So you can create the space and beautiful, not the host, but whoever, you create the nest for them to land in, and then they have their death day. And then maybe they have a piece of equipment that needs to be picked up. Like maybe they're in a bed and they just, whatever it is, you have some space on both sides of the planned death day. And that also might help the host with sometimes people will say, oh, on the weekend, it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday reservation, whether you're there the whole weekend, we don't want to break up the weekend for a 1 day. So maybe it's something like that. And then if they have, it's just like any other reservation. If they put it off and don't want to take their medication, their reservation ends on that day, and they'll go to a new location, another hotel or whatever it is that they want to stay at until but they know, I mean, I'm expecting that people would know that once they lose that reservation, there are less options.
Yeah. Interesting. It was some relieving in that feeling, the way you said, there's some relieving to me, feeling like, oh, well, if they choose just to continue, then that just means that they'll continue somewhere else, and
Mhm.
taking it day by day and deciding, how it feels. I was starting to stress out a little bit from that perspective, I think. So in some ways it was nice and relieving for you to say, if they're not ready, but your reservation ends, they still kind of have to
It's like,
vacate. So
yeah, it's like any
yeah.
other reservation, really. And choices are choices. I would not want anyone to ever feel forced into a decision or a
Yeah.
timeline based on a reservation. And so hopefully with the more connections that we can have in our community, the
Yeah.
easier that flow in that decision making. It may not be the house on the river that they are currently in, but if they want to do it 2 weeks from now, or they're kind of just holding on to maybe they just get a different place that's not that, you know, not what they imagine, but it's just living life. They just flow with it.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm really
That makes a lot of
interested in
sense.
the VSED, Tamara, and it sounds like Debbie's had experiences with that too. I'm curious if the folks are coming with a lot of like personal support in that process, because VSED is so, it can be so much harder to for the client to stay goal oriented when they have fluid and food. It's not on board for the first few days, and then confusion and some euphoria and other experiences. And so it generally takes a group of folks around you that understand what your goals are and will help gently keep a focus on your goal. So I'm curious how that's played out in your spaces.
Debbie, did you have I have some insights on that, but did you want to say something?
You go first.
Um, you know, I have to say it really, the timeline, you're right, it was really challenging. The only reason why I considered this reservation, to be totally frank, is because I happened to be going out of town. So it was a block of time that would not otherwise be rented anyway. I'd already blocked out 2 weeks, where my spouse is staying, but I'm gone, and normally I would just, not rent to anyone. But as luck would have it, or luck or whatever, um, she called at just the right time, and I made an arrangement through outside of Airbnb with just a short-term rental agreement that outlines, prorated money back for any unused days. So she believes it will be about that 2-week period. If it extends beyond, unfortunately, she's going to have to pack up and find somewhere else. But because I do have renters when I return. But yeah, it's really challenging. Normally, we have a 2-day minimum and we can make that promise. And so far, we've only had 3 bookings, which surprises me. I thought we'd have more, considering there aren't very many hosts willing to offer their homes up. But yeah, in the last 2 years, only 3.
How do people
Um,
find you? How do they know you say yes?
so I connected with Jane Foreman, a
In the village?
volunteer. I think it was in about 2 years ago. She came into, I had a shop at the time, and she came into my shop and gallery, and I had a art show, actually, it was a group show with 20 local artists who did work about death and dying. And one of our participants, one of our best friends, we lost her to ALS. Um, so that was the timing was just right, that, my spouse and I were interested in getting involved, to help folks out with planned uh, life, ending their life, but weren't really sure how. So we hosted this art show, and then Jane attended and got us connected that way. But um,
So it's all been
anyway,
word of mouth, each one of those
yeah, word of
reservations
mouth.
through
And I
Jane?
think we're on a list somewhere, with
Oh, I bet you're,
EOLs.
got it. Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I do have, I mean, I can ask this later because it's sort of a different topic. I don't know. Debbie, do you want to talk a little bit, and I'll ask my question later?
Go ahead and ask your question. I'm curious too.
Okay, well, sorry, I'm kind of going out of order here, but I had a friend of mine call me last night, actually, which is, again, just the strangest timing that this would happen. Literally at 10 o'clock last night. A good friend of mine is dealing with a mother, who has decided, she has a brain condition, I guess. So she's living in extreme discomfort, and it is her choice. She wants to end her life, but it's technically not terminal. I forget the name of the brain condition. I don't remember I don't remember what it was, but I guess, my first question is, what are the legalities if, is it legal? I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, but is it
It's
legal, to, encourage, or not encourage, but facilitate, I guess, a space and helping someone through cessation of eating and drinking, when they're not in hospice and they haven't had that 2-doctor sign off, and they're not being assisted by an organization like EOLCOR. So,
That's a question that comes up a lot, actually. Um, yeah, I have a very good friend whose neighbor was really trying to do that and didn't have a support system for VSED and didn't have a terminal diagnosis and ended up attempting suicide with medications she had sort of stockpiled, and ended up on a ventilator that the family had to pull. She didn't succeed at taking her life. And it's a really, there are some physicians, I had one case where the gal had early onset dementia. She knew exactly what she wanted. She did VSED to MAID bridge. So her doctor was Dr. Gideon's, and he's no longer practicing in Portland, but he was a medical director for a local hospice, and he agreed to, once she started VSED, I want to say it was 3 days in, she became hospice appropriate. They admitted her to hospice, and then she pursued medical aid in dying at that point. And so it's tricky. It's a slippery slope for most
Right.
docs. Most docs are not going to say yes to that. In fact, there is a conversation on the listserv for the Academy of Clinicians for Medical Aid in Dying. There's a listserv that you can just look at the conversations around that. And there was a question of the VSED to MAID bridge recently, and there wasn't any physician that spoke up in favor or of that. There were a lot of legal concerns around that. So
Right.
I could get on my soapbox and tell you what I think people should have choices in their life. I also think, Tamara, that there will be questions of you as a support person, if you are indeed going to be a support person, but the support of that person during that experience, there will be questions asked, and I don't know how that looks on a legal platform. And
Right.
so it's a little hard.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I wasn't really sure what to tell her, but of course, back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's some really tricky, potentially legal problems if I'm providing a space, but it's not, uh, overseen
Right.
through the right channels.
Yeah, you don't have control over a space that people do what they do in your space.
Right.
They carry guns in your space, and you find out later, right? So I guess it would depend on a lot of, I wouldn't be able to advise you, but I would actually love to speak to you on the side, just in regards to what the disease process is, and how I might be able to give some advice
Yeah,
on speaking
or even
to a
just
physician.
provide a resource for my friend, and
Yeah.
I'm interested in, out of curiosity, but I also want to connect her with someone who can help her understand what her options are. So
Mhm. It's becoming a larger conversation in regards to some of these, like, mental health issues, and people are tired of living in the state of being that they're in, and it's coming up a lot for folks. So I don't know where it'll go, but yeah,
thanks.
it's not
Mhm.
a uncommon question for sure.
Okay, can I ask a couple questions too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, we have had one experience, and in that experience, actually, she was going to be here. I guess for some reason she can't be here. I'm talking about the wife of the person who had the planned death. And the two of them rented our place for 3 weeks, basically. And um, he started that's because they had to have that 2 week prior to see the doc. They came from Iowa, so
Mhm.
they had to have that 2 week prior time to be able to go through the medical issues, so that they could get the prescription. And he started going downhill a little more quickly than they had anticipated, and he was concerned that he wouldn't be able to take the medication. So the doctor came out, saw him, said, well, we can move this up a little bit if you want. So they did. They moved it up to like 3 days later, 4 days
Days, yeah.
later. So they were at our house, and this woman has, I mean, the synchronicity, Tamara, as you're talking about how everything just kind of comes in the right way. This was an amazing situation for us because of the way that she approached us, what her husband's diagnosis was, and the progression of his disease was all very synchronistic with what was going on in our lives at the time with a family member. And there's no, plus she had my name, you know, so there's no way that we could, I mean, it just felt so right to say
They're
yes.
both Debbie's.
Yeah, we're both Debbie's. And anyway, she was super, super communicative with me. So she told me what was going on. She told me the process of what was going to be happening. We developed a really lovely communication, and I suspect we'll be friends for life, honestly. Elcor, Jane Foreman came out and talked with a bunch of hosts. Dave Monty contacted us. What was it, Dave? 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's about right. That's shortly after our first one, I think, is when we
Okay.
talked to you.
And so Dave arranged for Elcor to come over here and address 4 or 5 hosts at that time with what Elcor does. And I was a little surprised that there wasn't more communication with Elcor. We had no communication with Elcor. All of our communication was with the with Debbie. And if she hadn't communicated with us, we wouldn't have known what was going on. We do have cameras out in the front so that we could see that the doctor and the nurse came, you know, we could see when they left. But we totally respected their privacy and didn't go into their space at all. But it was really nice to know some of those basics. And I intend to reach out to Elcor and give them some feedback about this, but I also wanted to know about developing some kind of a communication line so that we're kind of all in the network, at least, so we know what's going on. So that was one of the things I just wanted to tell you about. We have another one that's planned, and I know nothing. I don't know where she's coming from. I don't know what her diagnosis is. I don't know. I know her planned date of death. But there's been no communication, and I'm thinking, well, maybe she's uncomfortable telling me about it because it's her own death. There's nobody doing this for her. And I don't want to impose on her sensitivities by asking her personal questions. So I don't really know where to go with this other than, you know, we've told her that the reservation was hers and she could have it. One of the things that I appreciate about Elcor is that because it's a medical assisted death, that the doctor and the nurse are there and they're with the patient. And Debbie told me that the doctor who was with them told her and Denny that it's usually 45 minutes to an hour or so for the medication to take effect. And so that really helped in being able to plan the whole, you know, blocking off of our calendar time, you know, so we didn't have an issue with that.
I would say, Debbie, it's a little tricky with that timeline because that is a typical timeline, but we did actually even have somebody at Hopewell that took the medications and lived for 6 days after he was in a coma the entire time. But that's a completely wild outlier, right? But that is something that could potentially happen.
Yeah.
And that is somebody you can't move out. I mean, you could, but that would be a wild experience to ask them to move.
Well, and this lady who is going to be coming in September wanted to end her reservation on the day that she took her medication. And I told her we needed to at least have that night covered so that if anything happened, you know, that extended the time frame, then we wouldn't have another guest coming in
I think that's really smart. I
So
think that's really smart.
I'm hoping that that's enough.
Yeah, and I mean, I think every host could ask for whatever it is that feels comfortable, you know. I mean,
Yeah,
I have some hosts that I've spoken to that want a 30-day reservation
yeah,
to give padding
Wow.
on both sides, and they will, they'll reimburse that money if it's unused. But I think that it's going to be host to host what feels comfortable
yeah.
for sure.
So I have a couple of questions for you, Marcy. One is I'm very curious how Airbnb responded to you, because when we had this little group meeting, we specifically did not want Airbnb involved.
Oh, I didn't speak to Airbnb. I spoke
Oh,
to
you
each
didn't?
individual host
Oh, I
Okay.
see. I see.
personally, and they said they
Okay.
gave me specifics like, call me directly, here's the number, tell me what your plan is, and don't talk to anyone else about it, and don't put it on the
Listing.
what
Yeah.
when you tell how your experience
Don't put
was,
a review.
Yeah. Oh, no
your
review.
review, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's very specific,
Yeah.
requests from them, but I did not talk to anyone from
Okay.
the
Okay.
platform.
So the other question that I had is about Hopewell House. Debbie had mentioned that that was another alternative for them too. And I was shocked to hear that Hopewell House wanted a deposit of $9,000 in order for them to consider them to come. I thought, wow, what does Hopewell House offer?
So it can be on a sliding scale. They also take a Medicaid payment, which is much better now. Medicaid, there is I keep saying we, but I'm really not part of the Hopewell House we anymore. They got a Medicaid reimbursement that's a specialty reimbursement. They applied for it and got that. So Medicaid now pays the actual cost of the bed. So the cost of the bed is $675 a day. And people don't generally need that because they don't need nurses. They don't need CNAs, right? So that's why the cost of the bed is so high. And there is a sliding scale for it. People coming from out of state are not going to get Medicaid approved in time. That's not something that's because their Medicaid in their state is not going to transfer to Oregon Medicaid. So that's kind of challenging, but there still is a sliding scale option. So people can come and pay zero based on their income and what their abilities are. And I don't remember it being 9,000. I can go back and take a look, but they asked for a 7-day payment because when I met with the executive director the last time to talk about my clients coming from out of state and how they wanted to work with that, one, there's a lot of administrative costs to admit somebody in. And so taking somebody in and getting time before they even take their medications takes a few days, and they may minimize like 3 days. I don't know, but they ask people to pay a 7-day fee that is just a block fee instead of a day by day.
Okay.
And really what she expressed to me in our meeting was they don't want to be sort of the fly by night hotel for death and dying. Like they want to have an experience. They also, I mean, we have, I keep saying the folks that work there also, there is some protections that are coming for them as well. I mean, they're processing up to 30 deaths in a month. So sometimes there's multiple deaths in a day. Sometimes there's that aspect also sort of on the back end is there is a culture to be maintained and the protection of like what people can process emotionally as
Sure,
well. And
sure.
so in this moment, I can't say it wouldn't change, but in this moment, they are asking for 7 days minimum and payment, and also asking that folks, there was a gal recently that paid for the 7 days and then only came the afternoon of the planned death day. And it was really interesting. kind of in parallel with your experience with this gal that's not communicating with you, a whole family comes walking in the door, they sequester themselves in the room, they don't want anybody helping them, the staff's kind of confused as to like, do they need us, should we check in? They don't really know how to interact or if they should interact. Then the shifts are changing and they're trying to sort of figure it out too. Has she already taken the medications? She didn't want Elcor there, she didn't want the doc there. So kind of what's going on in there? You know, it was kind of a really interesting experience that didn't quite feel right to anyone really that was involved. And then kind of picking up the pieces after the death of here's several young teenage, young 20-year-old children with with mom who has died in the room, and how and when does the staff assist them in their grieving process, because it's real. And even though they wanted all this privacy, like there's a lot of pain happening in that room for 3 young individuals who have never experienced a death before. So it was just very bumpy and difficult, I think, for all parties, and they don't want to set up that kind of experience. That's not ideal for anyone.
And as far as the facility is concerned, what do they offer for support for the patient?
So the families can sleep there. There's an extra guest room if it's reserved. They can sleep in the rooms as well, and we host the families. Keep saying we. It's like founder syndrome in my brain.
It's okay. I get it.
And so there's music, there's pets, there's all types of therapies, Reiki, massage, and these are for the residents, and their family members. So every day there are therapies that are offered. There's a therapy room, or therapies can happen inside the resident's room. All the meals are made from scratch. Families are fed. There's always food out for families every single day. And then management of medications, so the families can just let go and say, you know, take a deep breath and say, I'm not their person anymore. I can just be their daughter. I don't have to think about, you know, morphine at 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. You know, they can just let go of all that. So it really, in my opinion, it really does cater to the higher needs folks, and they're looking for folks to assist folks in the last 2 weeks to month of life. That's the primary target zone, because that's when caregiving gets really, really hard and people are just exhausted. And so there's just a lot of holding of that organic space to meet grief when it comes, because the hospice nurse shows up and 45 minutes of a visit and they leave, and there's all these things happening for families outside of that 45-minute visit, you know, an organic conversation coming up and somebody understanding how to hold presence for that grief or trauma or whatever it is that's coming up is just so healing for folks. And there's no billing code for presence, and that's really presence care is kind of the idea, is
And
just being there.
I can see the need for you, because what I'm hearing as I'm hearing you talk about this, and what a lovely thing that Hopewell House offers, those of us who are doing this don't have training like this. And so if we have someone like you to talk to, how can we help? What are some of the best kinds of words that we can use? What are things that we look for that might be helpful? Are there certain questions that we might want to ask our guests that will open doors of communication or need for them? I'd love to have some training like that.
I would love to participate in that. I think it's going to be different from host to host, because what I'm hearing is some people really want to just be hands off, but they would love to provide this for someone. And then other people really want to be in there, and how can I help? How can I help create this beautiful space and nest and experience for you? And it's more of like, there's wide ranges of hosts, and what they do and don't want for themselves. But yeah, absolutely. I think presence is just, both of my parents have died this year, and also
I'm sorry.
going through this experience with my husband recently, I'm realizing, even in my tight circles of death care, people aren't well versed in how to be present with folks that isn't pity, that isn't that doesn't stress the other person even more. They think they're being helpful, but it's actually quite the opposite. And so teaching presence is really vital, really vital. Just, I could go on and on about that, but
Super interesting.
Yeah, I could, some classes would be awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great topic for a future meetup, in fact. And I don't know, this concept of being present, right? It means so many different things at so many different times, but being present in these challenging circumstances, especially, seems really good. I know that you have Liminal Lodges as your group of folks who are looking to be more accommodating for the end of life experience. It sounds like there's going to be good opportunities for host to host and those folks to do some collaboration, some
Yes.
ways that you folks can educate us, some ways that
Yes.
our hosts can help you know how to be better, hosts for these. Since yeah, this is
I would love
beautiful.
I would
I
love
do
it.
too.
And the
Yeah.
folks that I'm connecting with, and we just dubbed ourselves Liminal Lodges last week, because it's like, the trying to title ourselves like the folks that get together that want to provide medically. And I'm like, that's too long.
Yeah.
We need a
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
So these folks are hospice chaplains, and they're in
Okay.
they're in death work, and that's why they want to create a space for folks, specifically this population of folks. They don't want to rent for just vacationers. They just want a space available for this. And they're looking for understanding on how to do short-term rentals. What are the rules? How do we, and I can't answer any of those questions. And then on the other side, they do know how to be present, how to,
Yeah.
what are the things to look for. And so it feels like a mentorship between the
We can
two
share
would be
expertise.
just awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I know we're at time, but Debbie, I wanted to speak to your experience with the woman who is coming that you don't know anything about, and LCOR. So when I first started meeting with LCOR, really between the conversations with the prescribing physicians and LCOR, really and the host now, like that's the triangle, is for myself to be the hub, so that they're all talking, because all three of them are working in silos. And so if I can be the hub somehow for the clients coming, I can make sure that the physician knows that all of a sudden this person can't swallow and they're going to need to move up their day, and that person that doc needs to be called at 11 p.m. to talk about that. And sometimes they show up and find out surprises because nobody knows that anybody changed physically. And then LCOR isn't necessarily having a direct conversation with the docs all the time either. Like there are so many silos happening that I'm hoping that I can kind of smooth that out a little bit. And everybody has a choice of whether they want to speak to their experience or whether they want to be private. And
Yes.
maybe that hub can facilitate a little bit of like getting permissions. One of the things that I do straight out of the gate is to ask my clients for permission to speak to their healthcare. So I can speak directly to LCOR and directly to the doctors on behalf of them. And maybe the host could be part of that conversation as well, just for advocacy.
Do you work only with LCOR, or do you work with some of the other organizations in other counties?
I'm just my own person who
Really?
created end of life. Yeah, I created this LLC and I'm working with logistics and questions, and maybe that grows, but I literally have had 4 clients so far. And so this is all brand new. And I also in hopes that it grows, have a group of 8 doulas who can also function like I do, because your husband might go missing on a Friday night and then you aren't there for people. So that's kind of where we are right now, but it's all shaping and shifting and growing. So
And
I just get referrals from mostly the physicians, and LCOR have been the referrals that I've gotten. And people call me from their state and say, what do I do first? And I say, let's work together and I'll get you going. But people in state too. I've got a gal that lives in Northeast Portland right now. So I just know a lot
and
of
the
people in
needs
the
are
community.
different too, right? So that's a
Every
whole part
single
of another
time.
conversation almost, is that the needs for the in-state folks are sometimes different from the needs of the out-of-state folks, and having
The
some
needs,
insights in that.
the needs
Yeah.
for every single client are different. I mean, it
True.
really can just, that first hour that I give them as an assessment hour, I can identify just based on my history and my connections in the community, because I've been working with all of these. I've been working with discharge planners and hospitals and docs, and I know all these folks, and EMS and transport, and and funeral homes. I know all the people and the players. So somebody can just bring up something and I'm like, bam, 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 these are the things that you're going to need to have in place next. And this is where we're headed. Like, somebody just told me yesterday, I want to have my death at a beach house. And I said, okay, and this is what that means. Your doc will not be present if you go out of Portland.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, whoa, wait, so it's,
Huh.
it's all just developing now, but
Yeah. That's
so
fascinating.
are Debbie and Tamara both on the LCOR list? Are your homes both on the LCOR
Yes,
list?
well, I am. Tamara, you probably are too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
Are
think
there
so.
any other folks in Host2Host that are on that list, or
Oh,
or want to
Dave.
be?
Dave and
Oh
some.
yeah, Dave. Yeah. Dave. We've known each other for a long time.
I'm trying to remember who else was at that meeting that might have, Kim Gordon Cumbo might be.
I'm just curious if there are folks that are considering this that haven't reached out and connected to LCOR to be on that list.
I think she was going, if she wasn't able to come to the session that we had at our house, but she just reached out to me a month or so ago and asked about it. So I know she's interested. And she has a separate ADU. Our space is actually attached to our home, and it's a studio. So it's not like your family members can come and stay with you, and you can host more than one like Dave and Silka have a 2-bedroom apartment that they offer, which I think that is probably more comfortable for a lot of people. What do you offer, Tamara?
I have an ADU in the back of my house, so it's connected to the house, but it's a separate apartment. It's fully functional house.
And how many can you sleep in there?
It's just 1 bedroom. We have a king bed, but there is a living room where we can set up an air bed. And that was actually another question on this one for next week. Normally there's people in attendance for the 2-day time period when you're doing a planned injection, but if it's 2 or 3 weeks, you've got all this time where who's going to be there assisting, or is someone going to be there at all times? What if the patient passes when no one's there? Is there going to be a time when no one's there? So that was my big question. And yeah, it turns out they're going to alternate, and someone will always be in the living room, and there is a door that separates the two. But yeah, I was going to suggest, it seems like you'd probably have a lot of hosts who are interested in helping, but are maybe just not being presented. I know I had to seek out a lot of my own answers to questions, and I wasn't originally really presented with all the practical advice, body fluids and bedding, the nurses or who's on site the whole time. How to talk to neighbors is another thing we had to figure out, because they obviously are going to have concern when they see a
Body
hearse
leaving.
pulling up multiple times. It's really good to hear about not the education, but the family support, grief counseling, because that's a concern I had too. Like, are people going to be upset on the property, and how do I talk to them? How to write rental agreements, things like that, I think
Mhm.
practical advice would be really useful to get more people on board.
I would love to be a resource for any host in conversation, looking at your space, thinking about, and I learned from you too. So I started to create a advocacy form checklist for hosts, in regards to what is your floor made out of? Could a hospital bed wheel damage your floor? I mean, all kinds of things. And I would love at any point during your experience with folks at end of life to be utilized as a resource. Call me on
Yeah,
the phone and just say, hey, I've got this person. I'm not sure how
yeah,
what does the van pickup look like
right.
for a body? And they're minivans now. They don't have any, they're
Yeah.
unmarked minivans, but
And these are all things we don't think of, like you mentioned with the floor, that was not something that was even on my radar until the client actually suggested,
mhm,
we have a rug we're going to bring in to protect your hardwoods. And
mhm.
I was like, oh, that's great. I never even considered that,
Right.
so
And I
all
have
those
all
little
those
things.
things too. Like for my clients, I have, if they wanted to use incense, I have a metal incense holder that has just small holes in it. So it's safe. I've got electric candles. I've got carpets to put down. I've got bed protectors. Like I would love to have an idea of each person's space, what they do and don't want, and then be able to advise my clients to respect your space in the right way, or even connect them to the right house,
Right.
the right setting that fits their
Their
needs and the